Today we wrap up our series, Good Questions, Good Decisions. Here's what we run it through the lens of ask, answer honestly, and then act. You're going to ask, then you're going to answer yourself honestly, and then you're going to act on what the answer is. As a quick review, the first question we explored was the integrity question. And this simply is, am I being honest with myself? And then ask yourself, really? Add that little word with a question mark. The integrity question, am I being honest with myself? Really? The second question we explored was what we called the legacy question. What story do you want to tell? What story do you want to write about yourself? Then we moved on to the third question to help us make better decisions with fewer regrets, and it was what we called the conscience question. Is there a tension that deserves my attention? Is there a stress, a pause, a wonder? If so, then that deserves my attention. Then the fourth question was the maturity question, and it was simply this: what is the wise thing to do? What's the wise thing to do in this situation in light of my past, in light of my present situation, in light of my future? I'm mature, so I'm asking, what is the wise thing to do? That brings us to our last question, question number 5. And this question is called the relationship question. The reason it's our final question is because it's not about making your life better, it's about making someone else's life better. However, should you have the courage to ask and act on the fifth and final question, it positions you to make the world better. You see, Jesus' words represented a paradigm shift of epic proportion. They turned the world upside down because they established a kingdom that looked upside down to the world. Here's what he said, Gospel of John 13:34. I'm giving you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, so you too are to love one another. He says, a new commandment I give you. Honestly, at that point, they probably didn't even need any new commandments. They had plenty. You see, Jesus wasn't adding a commandment to an existing list of commandments. He was doing something far more radical. He was replacing the existing commandments, all of them, with a new commandment I give you. And this is the commandment: love one another. Maybe in my world, be kind, be nice, be considerate, be compatible. But you see, Jesus really wasn't through, and he wasn't commanding them to feel something. He was commanding them to do something. Big difference. It's not emotional. It's something that we do. What came next was unthinkable. But what came next changed the world. There was a shift. What came next trumped the golden rule. We've always known the golden rule from a kid in my world. Hey, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But what he says here, as I have loved you, so you must love one another. You see, in that moment, Jesus established himself as the standard for love and the standard against which we're to measure and evaluate our own behavior. Then this part would change so much. Jesus said this: by this, John 13:35, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Jesus' new all-encompassing command was far less complicated than the prevailing system, but it was also far more demanding. You see, in the new commandment, there are no loopholes. There are no workarounds in this brand of love that he's pushing and bringing. This brings us to our last and fifth final question that we're going to say it's the relationship question. You see, this question paves the path to a relational health. How healthy are you relationally? Family, co-workers, neighbors, anybody. You see, it lays a foundation for mutual benefit and satisfying relationships that I think we all crave. That relationships is about what Jesus is pushing, but to have them with love. You see, it's a question everybody should ask. What does love require of me? Okay, right there. That's the fifth question. What does love require of me? That's a pretty heavy question. This clarifying question should stand guard over our conscience. It should serve as a guide, a signpost, and compass as we navigate the complexities of our relationships. I understand, I'm pastoring, I've lived a few years now, and relationships can be complicated, can be challenging. And let me just interrupt myself for a minute. That's where the devil tries to attack our relationships against each other, family, church. If people can get our relationship sideways against me as a pastor. And so Jesus is coming back and saying, hey, let's talk about relationships. You got to love one another. You see, the question gives voice to God's will for us on issues where the Bible is silent. It would be what I would say, it kind of fills the gaps. It succeeds where coordinates fail. If you're a Christian, it crushes the thought. And here's the thought. But the Bible doesn't say there's anything wrong with, and you fill in the blank. When we go back to the question, it's a question about relationship. This question closes all the loopholes, all the gaps. I think we're all tempted to ask and wonder a little when we get in a situation by a relationship, when we're unsure of what to do or even what to say. Ask, what does love require of me? You see, love is kindness. Love is goodness. Love is gentleness. Love is faithfulness. Love is self-control. So what does love require? I would say when in doubt, max these out. Max them out. What does love require of me? What does love require of us? I also know in Paul's writings in 1 Corinthians 13:5, he says love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. And it's not proud. Love does not dishonor others. You see, love never treats one another disrespectfully. Love never dishonors one another. Love is never indecent. Love doesn't create regret. Again, the question, what does love require of me? It's a great question. You see, I know that love isn't self-seeking. Love is not easily angered. And here's something, love never keeps score. I've done enough marriage counseling and enough involvement with people that if we're not careful, we keep score, and that creates an unhealthy relationship. If we lean into what Jesus says, we're going to know this, that love conveniently forgets the bad and it elevates the good. In other words, love doesn't keep track. There's no score list. There's no punch list of wrongs and rights. Love doesn't delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. Love always protects. Love works to protect the relationship. So again, what does love require of me? Fifth and final question. If I'm going to make better decisions and I'm going to have fewer regrets in my arsenal of vetting my decisions, I have to weigh in, I have to lay in the final question. What does love require me to do? If you're a Jesus follower, if you're a Christian, this is like asking, what does my Lord require of me? I think that's probably easier for us to answer, but when we put a relationship in there, somebody that we see, that probably makes it a little harder for us to digest. But if someone asked you, hey, what does your Lord require of you? I'm sure you could just rattle it off. But love requires me to do things that maybe I naturally wouldn't feel like doing. It may require you to get up out of your chair, walk into the kitchen or the bedroom and apologize. Love is going to require, yeah, it might. It may require you to pick up a phone, build a bridge that you've burned down. Maybe some may need to drop an email or a text to someone. You say, why do I have to do that? I'm simply going to say, because that's what love requires. Good questions lead to better decisions. So here's a good question. What does love require of me? And then your decisions determine the direction and quality of your life. Every one of us want a great quality of life. And my decisions create the story of my life. So I'm simply going to say, hey, write a good one. Write an amazing story of who you are, because you have the pen, you have the canvas, you have the backdrop. And remember, your current regrets are only a part of your story. They are not the story. It does not have to define you. And do what love requires of you. It changed the world once, disciples, and perhaps it might change the world again. But here's what I want to say as we kind of wrap up our series, and I appreciate you listening and leaning into this. Even if it doesn't change the world, it will certainly change your world. And I think that's really what it's all about, right? We can only live in our own world. The relationships that we foster, the relationships that are damaged, the decisions maybe we didn't know about God, we didn't know about biblical principles, I didn't know about teachings. And so we find ourselves sitting here today completing a series about, hey, I'm tired of regrets. I need to learn how to make better decisions. Somebody train me, somebody teach me. Would somebody please mentor me? Regardless of age, we can still move forward. And again, what does love require of me? And if you'll answer that question honestly with the other four, then you're going to move forward with fewer, maybe with no regrets. Hey, that'd be a great story to write, because you've made better decisions and you've allowed God to help you. Amen. God bless you for being here. Let's see what God won't do as we move forward with these 5 questions and the decisions that we have to make.